So start again.
Start again. I'm Tim Gibson, and this is I'm the Secretary of the Geelong Interfaith Network. And this is the third Zoom dialogue that we've had since February. And we have 7 presenters tonight on the subject of the spiritual education of children. And before I go any further, I'll do what we normally do at our meetings. I will make an acknowledgement of country. For thousands of years, Indigenous people have walked in this land on their own country. Their relationship with the land is at the centre of their lives. We acknowledge the Wadawurrung people and their stewardship of this land throughout the ages. We honour and pay respect to their elders, past, present and emerging. Now, a number of people are joined in with this dialogue tonight as observers and listeners. The procedure will be that I'll ask one particular presenter to speak for 5 minutes, and we'll give a little sign when the 5 minutes is up, and then we'll move on to the next speaker. We'll do that for all the presenters, speaking about their own tradition and what their faith would say about this subject. And then we'll go through the list again in a completely random order, so that again we don't have any favouritism. And that's when you can speak about your own personal experience and perhaps make a comment on what others have said, if you wish to do that. And at the end of the proceedings, we do hope that all of you, including the observers, will give us some feedback to our Gmail address or some other way, so that we know how we can proceed in future with these dialogues. We'd like to have different subjects and to involve different people from the different faiths on particular subjects. So I think we'll start with the one that we drew out of the hat first, and that's John Carroll. So John, your 5 minutes begins now.
7:34, I think. Okay.
My name's John. Before you start, sorry, John, I'll edit this little section out, but could everybody please mute themselves so that we don't hear any back noise? Thank you.
So for those who have joined, my name is John Carroll. I'm a school teacher in Werribee. I am representing the Buddhist community and specifically Drolkar. And for a number of years now, I've been involved off and on with Dharma workshops for children, and at both Tara Institute in Brighton and at Drolkar. And the idea that spiritual education of children has always interested me, but also on the same level, I've noticed that when parents have come to bring their children to these workshops, the parents are as often the fly on the wall, listening. So I've often wondered if spiritual education for children is that much different from adults. One of the things I would say about that is watching Sound of Music, which has been a family favorite in my family since I was a kid, and even my children, is the head nun. When they're talking about Maria, the head nun would refer to the other nuns as children. And so I always found that interesting, that even the nuns were considered children by the head nun at the abbey. So I do often wonder whether breaking it down to education for children is always that different for how we educate ourselves. In saying that, now I'm going to get into the technology that I've been trying to learn, and I'm going to try and share a screen here. So I'm going to hope this works. I'm hoping you can all see a thing that says gross national happiness. Would that be the case if someone could answer?
Yes.
Beautiful, love it. So in education, I think we've made a rather big digression in some instances, and this is something the Dalai Lama will mention, is that our education always seems to be driven at sort of growth economy. Bhutan, where this picture comes from, has placed a sort of a national process of gross national happiness is more important than gross national product. And this is something, when we talk about spiritual education, is something we need to emphasize from my perspective, and probably from the Buddhist perspective. The Dalai Lama's also talked about, like we talk a lot about physical hygiene or environmental hygiene, but we need to sort of be talking about mental hygiene as well. So now I'm going to try and jump a little bit ahead and then come backwards a few times. So the Dalai Lama has also mentioned this: if every 8-year-old in the world is taught meditation, we will eliminate violence from the world within 1 generation. And of course, meditation and Buddhism, inseparable. So it's very hard to take up a spiritual education in Buddhism without adhering to developing some sort of practice in meditation. And one of the interesting things, now I've sort of got to move my screen back a bit, this is another, you know, when you particularly, like, even though I said about like with children and adults being the same in spiritual education, seeing children peaceful, as much as seeing them play, but considering a lot of the time we see younger children, even older children with technology, these sort of images, you know, picture says 1,000 words. These are the sort of images that, you know, produce that 1,000 words, whether being ecumenical, whether it was basically, you know, a Buddhist child or Christian child, Muslim child, whatever. It's a lovely image. In terms of meditation and children, this is a classic thing that you would teach at a primary school, secular school, maybe even a faith-based school, is we often teach to young children the 5 senses, and fair enough. But in terms of connecting the 5 senses with meditation, we don't often teach what happens with the 5 senses and how our mind works. And this is where I think in Buddhism, education for children, it's a sort of critical development, in that Buddhism suggests that we interact with the world through our 5 senses. And we basically have 3 thoughts. We like what we hear, we don't like what we hear, we're neutral about what we hear. Same with what we see, smell, touch, taste. In meditation, from a very young age, if you are starting to become aware of how we sort of interact with our world and our world interacts with us through our senses, that sometimes our senses control us, and so outwardly we go and our mind is ruled by the senses, either in a positive experience, a negative experience, or a neutral experience. Meditation and this understanding how the senses develop our mental being, our consciousness, is a very important process that would be core to developing a basic education in children to what Buddhism often calls, so some people in Buddhism more often now that it's becoming more entrenched in Western countries, some of the teachers who are from places like Nepal, Tibet, India, are being more forthright in saying Buddhism is a science. There's very much the ritual, the faith aspect of it, but mentally understanding the mind, Buddhism is a science of the mind. And a presentation of developing meditation practices in younger people and understanding how mind is often reacts to what our sense experience is would be core in developing that process of children and their education. Then also we've got things like preparing for meditation. There's this great thing here, superhero yoga, which I've worked with kids for a while in developing that sort of body awareness, leading into meditation, leading into developing a good mental understanding of the world that we walk our children through. And obviously now, like the world that we walk them through compared to many years ago brings a lot more sensory sort of experience and can become overwhelming. So as a basic process, bring that sensory experience of the world into a more sort of recognition of how our mind reacts through meditation, through things like yoga, would be the basis of where we would be going. What else do I have here?
We've gone well over 5 minutes, John.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, gee, that happens fast. Anyway, thank you.
Okay. We now move to Ron Noon. If you could begin your 5 minutes, Ron. Thanks. You're muted. You're muted. Right, that's better.
Muted now.
You're right. Go for it.
Excuse me, John. Can you stop your screen share? Thank you.
Okay, Ron.
I'm ready to go. I can see you, all right. Can you see me?
Go ahead. Yes, yes.
Okay. Right. From the Anglican tradition, I think spirituality is a subset of religion or the religious experience, much like, biblical studies or church history or something. But in the latter half of the 20th century, I think spirituality developed into a field more of its own, and it seems to have increased in popularity at the same time as the term religion has attracted negative connotations. To give you an example, I think people go to war over religion, but I don't think it's likely they'd go to war over spirituality. I think the term spirituality has somehow been hijacked by secular discourse and deprived of much of its original religious meaning. And so often I have come across people who've said to me, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. What I think I mean by that is I acknowledge that there's a spiritual element in human life, but I don't go to church. I'm not pious. I don't exercise a spiritual dimension in a group capacity, in an institutional setting. Maybe, I don't know what I understand what they mean by it really. But in our tradition, spirituality is not simply practice. It's more a total orientation towards God. Spirituality consists of, firstly, I think, an honest self-knowledge, knowing where you are and who you are and the world around you. It's not escaping from the world. It's actually being part of it all. Spirituality animates people's lives. It sometimes lights the fire in people. It gives them passion. It contributes, like John, it contributes to human happiness. There's a wonderful quote by an Irish author I like called John O'Donoghue in his book Benedictus, and he says that spiritual aspect in all human beings possess, but not all acknowledge. I'd like to read it. There's a quiet light that shines in every human heart. It draws no attention to itself, but it is secretly there. It is what illuminates our minds to see beauty, our desire to seek possibility, and our hearts to love life. This shy inner light is what enables us to recognize and receive our very presence here as blessing. We enter the world as strangers who all at once become heirs to a harvest of memory, spirit, dream that has long preceded us and will now enfold, nourish, and sustain us. Though suffering and chaos befall us, they can never quench that inner light of providence. And I think regardless of our differences in religion or language or concept, there is no heart without this divine inner reference, a quiet light that dwells in our souls. I think that's a wonderful idea of what spirituality is, in our tradition anyway. When it comes to teaching and trying to teach spirituality, I get a bit lost there. I think we come across, my main teaching has been with adults and secondary school students. And I think I've come across the students who, the younger generation, have little sense of coherence. They have little sense of the stabilities and the reassuring elements of life. They are, in the old phrase, all at sea. But this generation was born at sea. And most of them, and they do not know whether there's such a thing as fixed land at all. So they have no reliable evidence that the whole thing's not sort of some sort of fantasy, and that they felt bewildered and outraged at a life where nothing much is real. I think all genuine knowledge of the world and all genuine knowledge of God sooner or later begins to burn in people. They want answers. They are questioning. And I think teachers are those people who can supply those, not so much the answers, but encourage the questions and keep on encouraging them to look deeper in life and have that purpose. Spirituality for me is about developing human happiness and letting people flourish. Human beings flourish. I think one of the enemies of is technology, really. One of the enemies of spirituality. And
well, thank you.
I think that's 5 minutes.
Technology is defeating us.
Yeah, right. Okay. As it usually does.
Thank you, Ron. And we move now to Anna. You're number 3, please. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Anna and I work at St. Mary's. So I'm coming to you from a Catholic perspective of nurturing and helping to bring our children up in the faith. And I guess we start, from the Catholic Church's perspective anyway, we start with the families who come to us, who come through our doors, seeking to give something to their children, and often they can't actually say what that is. They don't have the language for it. They don't have, perhaps the deeper understanding of it, but they know that they want their children to have something and that it's important. So I think it's very much a case, for me anyway, of meeting people where they are and then helping them along the journey of faith. And often it does start with the parents. From my perspective, I work a lot with parents too, because I'm sort of in charge of the baptismal program. So that is the, I guess the teaching, or in a sense, the teaching of the faith to adult people in terms of what baptism is and what it means, and the responsibilities that they're taking on with their children now that they've come to that point of wanting to bring their children up in the faith. And then as the children grow up and come through, they come to grade 3, we do reconciliation, grade 4, we do First Eucharist, and grade 6, we do confirmation. So I'm responsible in my parish for the education of children in the state schools, who the Catholic schools have their system already in place and the children learn those things at school. But the children who go to the state schools or to the private schools will often come to me outside of school hours, and we will journey with them to learn aspects of the faith as well. So I think from the Catholic's point of view, from the Catholic Church's point of view, we see ourselves very much in working in partnership with the families. Families, the expectation is that the families will participate in the life of the church. Now, that doesn't always equate to the parents coming to church, but it does mean that we have an expectation on our families to be nurturers of their children in the spiritual development as well. And the way I say that to parents is, as parents, you're responsible for everything for your children. We're responsible for choosing what they wear, what doctor they go to, what sports they'll do, and there's training that goes along with some of those things, and it's no different in the faith. We have to help our children develop their faith as parents, and hopefully the church and the schools will work in partnership with those families to do just that. Of course, we live in a pretty secular world these days, it seems, anyway. But I actually am a little bit more optimistic about our young people. I think I see a lot of wonderful qualities in the young people that I come across. And, you know, I'm generally working with children in the primary schools, but, you know, I have had a couple of opportunities to go into the high schools and talk to children as well. And I think there's a great sense of justice in young people. They yearn for justice. They look for ways that they can contribute to justice issues. And I think that, you know, that's one of the things that we try to do in the Christian community. We try to, you know, encourage young people to be involved in their communities and to seek and fight for justice in whatever area that they're looking to do that. In terms of the development of faith for the children that I work with, it's a beautiful experience for me. And we just had well, back in April, I had a group of 7 children that I worked with for confirmation. And because it was just the 7 of us and me, we actually built up quite a lovely rapport, and their service, when they had their service, was absolutely wonderful. I had one of the children playing violin. You know, it was just such a beautiful ceremony and a beautiful service. So I would say the main thing from the Catholic Church's perspective is that we always believe and try to pass on to our families that, you know, there is always an open invitation. God's invitation is infinite, you know, it's always there. And we are always there as a community for people when they come to us as well, without too many demands, you know. We can't force people to fall in love with Jesus. It doesn't work like that, you know. But we hope that religion. My belief is that religion is something that's caught. It's not necessarily taught. It's caught. But I just want to. I know my 5 minutes is nearly up, but I just.
It is up. Sorry.
It is okay. All right.
We'll move now to Dr. John Bellavance, please. Your time now.
All right, let me share this with you. Look, I did my PhD in the use of technology by high school children, and it was basically what values drive their use of technology. And I drew a lot on computer ethics, but also on moral psychology. Just a little bit about Ambassador for Peace Network. We are an interfaith organization in the sense that we're operate the Universal Peace Federation in probably 150 countries around the world. And just in Victoria, we have Christian, Muslim, Hindus, Unificationists, and Buddhists that work together. We have just recently began to try and set up a interfaith group. My wife is there, and one of our pastors is there with Sandy from the Interfaith organization and a Catholic priest, and in the Yarra Ranges. So look, my topic is really about the issue of empathy and conscience. So when I looked at young people's use of technology, I realized that their struggles are with very much a struggle of the heart. And so empathy is a struggle. It's not an easy issue when we use technology. But conscience is also there. But so in a sense, those moral emotions, empathy and conscience, encourages us to do good. And I found that was true in the young people. Also, a lack of it was, of course, an issue. Confucianism talks about this concept of, right from a very early age, about the idea that we can sympathize with the pain of others. But also in our hearts, we feel when there's something is wrong and false. This is an inborn nature. So what Confucianism is arguing for is that we have to listen to our conscience. Jesus said the truth shall set you free, because in a sense, when we listen to the truth in ourselves, we become a more free person. Reverend Dr. Moon, the founder of my own faith tradition, Unificationism, says that our conscience is our precious teacher, who knows us better than our parents or even God. Our conscience is God-given and enables us to improve and realize our potential. In Romans, it was talked about this as well, that it talks about having the law within your heart, and you should listen to your heart. So the law that is required is written in our own hearts. And so in Islam, it also says that a messenger I went to the messenger of God, and he said to me, you want to know about virtues? And he said, yes, question your heart. So over and over again, the issue of morality that I found with young people is that actually this ability of the conscience, and interestingly enough, now finally moral psychology has acknowledged its existence, and they call it an intuition of rightness or wrongness, which is the voice of our conscience before a behavior, and that is, well, I shouldn't do this, and remorse felt after. All of this moral emotion, conscience, which spiritual traditions have recognized the powerful voice of the conscience within human nature, is actually part of our DNA. It's part of our moral DNA, which comes from God. However, psychology has now recognized that empathy and other qualities and altruism are part of our DNA as well. So there's an intuitions of rightness, there's an evaluation, there's taking the perspective of others, and finally acting based on that conscience. This is, and I'll try and finish this very quickly, the human conscience is the faculty of the mind that represents God. It does not exist for personal benefit, it always exists for goodness. So again, if we draw back to spiritual traditions, it's this listening to the intuition of rightness and wrongness, evaluating our actions based on that, and taking a perspective of others. As human beings strive to follow moral laws, there's a mind that tries to protect us from falling into ruin. And this mind was with God from the very beginning. The conscience is not a self-made law. God is the King of wisdom. He does not place the path of perfection in some far-off place. He prepared it in a place that is nearest to us, and that is the most private and safe place, which is our conscience. I think we can all relate to that in a way our conscience is our inner voice, but it actually is a very private and safe place because we are our own judges in that respect. So the conscience, by its operation, urges us to continually evaluate ourselves and make ourselves increasingly value-oriented. The 4 points I have at the bottom there are simply to show what moral psychology considers the voice of the conscience and the voice of empathy within human beings. In 1 Peter's, it says, keep your conscience clear. A guilty conscience is evidence that you've broken some heavenly law. So the other aspect of being human, if we want, is also feeling remorse. And I'll finish by just saying that one of the boys that I interviewed said, he was in grade 9, he said that many young people relate to doing something wrong using technology on social media, putting someone down and saying, he said to me, and they go back and they look at it and they say, why was I such an idiot? Why did I have to do this because I hurt someone else? This is a powerful, so even the conscience of young people is activated in the use of technology. Thank you for listening.
Wonderful. We now move to Pranadasa. Yeah.
Everyone. Okay, so just a short definition of Hinduism, I guess, and maybe a small disclaimer, if you like, that I've been a practitioner of the Bhakti tradition for the past 36 years or so, and Bhakti is certainly an offshoot of Hinduism, and how the Bhakti tradition, which is very much steeped in the Vedic tradition of the modern day Hindu, and it flourished during the Middle Ages under the patronage of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he deliberately evolved a non-sectarian religion, which was open to men, women, children of any caste, creed, or color. And at that time, and until very recently, only within the geographical boundaries of the Indian subcontinent. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings and practices were and are very all-inclusive and universal. And in 1965, many of you will be aware of in the Western world, these teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to the Western world through the endeavors of the great bhakti practitioner and scholar, his A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder of the ISKCON movement. So that's where we sit in the Hindu tradition, that ISKCON is very much part of the Vaishnava tradition. Comes from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from like the Middle Ages, you can say, but it was very much an enlightenment age and the age of non-sectarian religion, inclusiveness. I'd like to look at the definition of the word education, and etymologically there's two derivatives of the word, or two words that combine to give us the meaning for the word education, Latin words. And the first one is educare, of course, which means to train or to mold or to teach somebody. And the other one is educere, which means to lead or to bring out, to extract. So that molding and teaching and training and bringing out combine together and serve us very well, I think, in the discussion of spiritual education, of course, material education as well. And that has caused a great dichotomy in education circles for millennia, whether we're a blank slate to put information into, or that we are going to extract and to evolve or to fan the spark that is within. By spiritual, and I hear this is something that I've heard the speakers tonight speaking, and I resonate with the spiritual for us in our tradition is very much about the soul and the soul's relationship with God. And to remove the God factor from spirituality seems very much to leave us in a homeless, in a shipwreck almost, because the very basis of spirituality is a connection with God, with the God principle. The five, I think, in terms of what we want children to take from a spiritual education, my number one takeaway is that we want them to develop a relationship with God, a personal relationship with God. So a love of God, developing love for God is very essential in our tradition of spiritual education. Of course, we want them to develop virtues and qualities with the head, the hands, and the heart, to become independently thoughtful. And we want children to make good choices in their lives and to teach them to make good choices and how to live in peace and harmony within the world. That would be my five aims of a spiritual education: to love God, to develop virtues and qualities, to become independently thoughtful, to make good choices, and to live in peace and harmony within the world. Now, what that means in terms of a faith view is bringing that spirituality into a tangible realm, and something that I've been working with over the decades, and that is engaging children and adults, but engaging children in practical activities that will help them to reignite or to reconnect with their relationship with God. And we do that through the senses, we do that through experiences, very much on a tactile, tangible, interactive platform. And so one of the important concepts in the Hare Krishna movement, or our aspect of Hinduism, is a concept called devotional service. And that devotional service is that the Bhakti Yoga translates as devotional love for God. And that is, we perform activities which will enable us to connect with our origins, with our constitutional position, if you like. One term that we use to help us to clarify that is the word dharma. And dharma means the constitutional position of every living entity. And that constitutional position is inseparable. So what is an example that's often given is the dharma of sugar is its sweetness, or the dharma of fire is its heat or light. So the dharma of the living entity, of the human being particularly, is service to God. And that's a universal principle that we like to present to children so that they can cultivate a relationship right from an early age and develop that strong sense of identity with their individuality.
I think your time is overdue, so thank you very much. And we now have to move on to our next speaker, who's Terry Turner. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you to everybody else. In the Baha'i community, education, spiritual education is a critical, foundational, pivotal point across all age groups. Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, one of his statements is, regard man as a mine rich in gems of inestimable value. Education can alone cause it to reveal its treasures and enable mankind to benefit therefrom. Now, this does not state an age. It's about any human being. It's about every human being, regardless of who they are, where they've come from, background, race. There is no boundaries whatsoever. It's for every single human being has that capacity within them, that those gems, that their capacities are there. And we, as teachers, educators, trainers, facilitators, tutors, animators, whatever role that we are acting through, is that we're calling on what's within every single human being anyway. And how each individual then expresses their capacities from that inner power is how humanity as a whole can grow and move forward. Abdul-Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah, went on to say that among the greatest of all services that can possibly be redeemed by man to Almighty God is the education and training of children. And that within that means that we cannot separate a child from its family unit. And within the Baha'i community and within the writings of the Baha'i community, the family unit is that first structure of society and civilization. And if you look to your family unit, you will then be able to see what is happening in a community or within a society or within the world. And if we are focusing on the education, spiritual education of children, we have to take in the fact that the child is not separate from their family, is not separate from their community. And in that spiritual education of building the depth, the ability to think, the ability to work hard when required, the ability to know what choices are going to lead towards the betterment of humanity, or bringing more light into the world, or bringing more darkness into the world, has to be able to be understood. The ability to express, the encouragement of children to participate at every single level within the Baha'i community. There is an entire curriculum which is being slowly but surely developed, and it's called the Rui Institute, and there are 14 books presently, not all completed, and then there's some branch courses that come off that main spiritual education program. And there are the books for the 6 years of childhood. And then when the critical change occurs at the age of 11 and a half and 12, then there's a junior youth program, which is basically for 3 years, but an extremely critical time. And that the junior youth are encouraged and called upon to step into their nobility. And then there's the stage of youth, moving into the stages of adulthood. And spiritual education is never seen to finish. It doesn't matter how much you have learnt, or how much you have put into practice, or how much you have experience. The belief is that all of the sacred text, from whoever has written that sacred text, if it be from Bhagavad Gita, the Bible, through to all the manifestations of God, the knowledge that's within there is never limited.
Good. Thank you very much, Terry. We now move to our last speaker in this round, and that's Lynn. If you would go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Excuse me. And as I've been thinking about this, a song or hymn we sing at church has been in mind, and I'll just read the first verse. Teach me to walk in the light of his love. Teach me to pray to my Father above. Teach me to know of the things that are right. Teach me to walk in the light. Now, at church, we have a number of programs, and they're all centred in the home, but supported at church. Our children attend Sunday school from 18 months onwards. Obviously, the lessons are catered to different ages. And they have a children and youth program. It's based on Luke chapter 2, verse 52, where it talks about Jesus was a young man. He grew in wisdom and stature and in favour with God and man. And so there's different activities they can do. They're taught that, like him, they can grow spiritually, socially, physically and intellectually. And as they participate in the activities, they can build faith in Jesus Christ, help face life challenges, but they also learn to follow his example. So that's till about 12. Then from 12 onwards until 18, they continue to have Sunday school lessons, and they have activities as well. Before 12, it's fortnightly. After 12, it's every week. Okay. Now, we're taught that Heavenly Father's given us talents and spiritual gifts, and we need to develop our spiritual gifts so that we can understand what we need to do to become more like Jesus Christ, to make ourselves, make other people, and help make the world a better place. But the one area I really want to speak about is a special scripture study program we have called Seminary. It's a 4-year program in which the youth study the gospel of Jesus Christ as found in the scriptures and in the teaching of prophets. Its purpose is to help them understand and rely on the teachings and atonement of Jesus Christ, prepare ourselves, them to qualify for the blessings of the temple and prepare themselves, their families, and others for eternal life. Now, each year, we study a different scripture. One year we'll do the Old Testament, New Testament, Book of Mormon, and this year they're studying church history and continuous revelation. Now, the lessons are a mixture of these activities, so they're not just sitting there being talked at for an hour. Scripture study, reflection, interpretation, and trying to get them to apply in their lives what they've learned. And I know for myself, I taught it for 5.5 years. I was quite amazed how the Old Testament still applies today and how there was lessons in the Old Testament that I could apply in my life. Now, let's see. Now, in Geelong, our seminary class is held from 6:15 a.m, 4 mornings a week. Because of the pandemic, it was normally held at our local chapel. At the moment, I think it's on Zoom, just like we're doing. And while it's a bit harder not having face-to-face, it's enabled more students who may live a bit further away or may not normally be able to get there in time to attend. It's quite a commitment. I mean, we all know that teenagers aren't easy to get up. They all like their sleep, so it means they get up early. They're studying, reading their scriptures, and then some of them go straight to school and they're participating in other activities. I was constantly impressed with the students and some of the incredible insights they'd share. I remember one student who I've known since he was 4, and he was the joker of the class, always, but every now and again there'd be a gem that he would give. And we'd all sort of look at him and think, wow, but he gave an insight that, you wouldn't expect from a 15 or 16-year-old. And to see the changes and the growth in them, it's amazing. Each lesson opens and closes with prayer, has a spiritual thought, and the spiritual thought is given by the students using scripture or applying a principle for what they're learning. The lesson's then given, and participation's optional, but it's encouraged. And they're challenged to set goals and encouraged to develop their own testimony of Jesus Christ. Not rely on the knowledge of others, but to know for themselves. Because you can't live, ultimately you've got to learn for yourself. And the more you know him, the greater the chance you're going to desire to be like him. Now, I just remember one example. I had 2 of the seminary students. I was driving to a basketball game or something, and a friend of theirs who wasn't a member. And one of them saw something. It was a number plate, and I forget what the number plate was, but he turned to his friend and says, "Do you believe in God?" Tells us that if we ask God, he will be able to give answers to our questions. So do you know, and I think he says, do you know that if you have any questions, you can ask God? And then we just kept going, but it was something he'd learnt in his seminary class that he felt his friend needed to know, and he was prompted by a number plate. But that it impressed me because it made me realise, 1, he'd been listening, 2, that he'd incorporated into his life, that he'd felt that it was an important thing to learn. And I guess basically and like someone else said before, it's not just for children in a sense, it's for all of us. And the second verse of that song is, "Come little child, and together we'll learn." Good. I think of his commandments that we may return.
Lynn, thank you very much, Lynn. Now, we are going to have the second round now, but we will have to stop at 9 o'clock. So I will ask you in your second round to be a little bit more disciplined with the time. We have been going over each time probably by 1 or 2 minutes. So we'll now have the second round where you're asked to talk more from your personal experience and to make any comments you wish to make about the other speakers. And again, it's purely random. So the first one is, we can't have Lynn, no, because she's the first one will be Terry. Terry, would you please have your next 5 minutes now? Thanks, Terry.
Now, also, what I'll do is do the raise hand signal. So when you're up to 4 minutes, so then you know that you sort of need to wind up when you see the hand go up in our square. So if you just keep an eye on that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Thanks, Terry.
Hello, everybody. And it's been wonderful to hear from everybody's perspectives, the similarities and the connections of where we're all been serving and working. At this particular point in time in history, where everything that I know I personally hold important and valuable, that I have made my career and dedicated my service to children and their spiritual education, is deemed of no value whatsoever. I find it it's a test in itself, but I am permanently, as by the sounds of all of you, we are all determined that we cannot give up on the light. We cannot give up and turn to any negative areas at all, because we know that the children are our future. We know that the families need our support in a time when they've just about been completely shredded. And it's not something that has just happened over the last 10 years, 50 years. From my research, I can take it back 400 or 500 years, and possibly further. So within the Baha'i community, there is amazing people who also are not prepared to give up on the beauty and the light of what our role is presently here in humanity's journey. And within the Rui Institute, it is a curriculum that is being used all the way around the world. There are communities that are developing all sorts of different levels, and all of that is then, all the learnings from that are fed back into where the curriculum is being developed. And so the curriculum is also organic as we are learning as human beings, and as we develop, so is the curriculum. And again, it is not meant for just Baha'i families. It is meant for every single human being on the planet, because it welcomes every religion, it welcomes every race, it welcomes every single soul, because each and every one of us, we're all members of one human family, and we're all members, we're all the children of God and the one God. So lovely to have met you all. Lovely to have spent this space with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. And our next 5 minutes will be from Ron Noon. Thanks, Ron.
Oh, thanks, Tim. I think I want to concentrate on, in the future, one of my doctoral professors, Neil Postman, said in the 1980s that children are the living messages we send to a time we shall not see. Wonderful sentence, wonderful. And just recently, Jack Ma, China's richest man and the founder of Alibaba, called for a radical change in how we educate children. He said, everything we teach should be different from machines. And Richard Gill, the accomplished Australian composer, was passionate about music and music education, and he said similar things. We teach music because it acts in a unique way on the human heart, the mind, the soul, and the spirit of the child, stimulating thought and imagination in very special ways. Gill claimed that this requires our schools to teach independent thinking, teamwork, and care for others that no machine can possess. Skills and values, he believed anyway, that fostered through music and arts education. So it comes down to this, I suppose. In order to be truly or fully human, we need a transcendent element in our lives, something that raises our vision and spirits beyond ourselves. And how we do that seems to me to be immaterial. Various traditions will do it in different ways, but it's important that it's done. I think in our teaching and our learning, in that act, it always occurs in relationships. The basic act is relational, so you have to form a relationship with the students and be a dealer in hope. To get back to what Terry was saying about being positive and not giving up, and be a dealer in hope. Even Napoleon Bonaparte said, a teacher is a dealer in hope. Pretty good from Napoleon Bonaparte. And Paulo Freire, the educational philosophy from Central America, he said that teaching is about love. That's what it's about. So it's all about relational. It's about love in relationships and passing on that idea that the transcendent is present in our lives and is capable of being extraordinary. Thanks, Tim. Thanks everyone. Really enjoyed it.
Okay, we'll now move to John Carroll. Your 5 minutes.
Thanks. Obviously, a lot of you mentioned God. Buddhism does not hold to a God. However, in finding a connection between the faiths, Buddhism has what's called Tathagata. And Tathagata, or Buddha nature, is what we might define on a conventional level is the divine within. In Nepal and India, when you hear namaste, namaste translate as I salute the divine within you. And so this is a good thing, obviously, because if you greet somebody with the unconscious recognition that you're saluting the divine spark, someone said, within people, the soul, this is sort of a shared recognition. So that's the way that Buddhism and monotheistic religions can actually find some connection through the process of when we say namaste, or the Tathagata, the Buddha nature with all sentient beings share that essence. Reconnection, religion, I think religare in Latin, reconnect. So in our practice, we're always looking to reconnect, religare, and that's what we're, with children, we're trying to reconnect them into something. Like when we talk about technology, we find, and very much what Ron was saying, is technology seems to disconnect people from each other. That seems to be obvious. And for children, it seems to disconnect them from nature. One of the things that I sort of try and work on with kids, and I hope this will come up just quickly, is I might not be able to do this. I might have lost this one here. I'm hoping you can see this picture here. If someone can see that picture of a tree and lungs. Yeah.
John, do you want to click on it?
Pardon?
Do you want to click on it, see if we can make it bigger?
This is one of those instances where basically, like, you got to open up the image beforehand, and that I'm having trouble doing and still seeing all of you. I'll try this one more time and share screen. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, can we see that now? Yeah, okay. So here we have the tree and the lungs, and trying to get to the children the idea that a lot of children ask me what this is. And obviously the lungs and the tree present a very similar image. Obviously the lungs take in the oxygen, the trees give us the oxygen, the lungs put out the carbon, the trees take in the carbon. And this is our connection with nature. And so a lot of the time with children, that's where we're trying to head, is to get them back. This is a great little thing from Lunik talking about, you know, dear little ant, what have we done to you? About how we really have taken away our connection to all living things and find some living things less important than ourselves. And everything starts to break down from here. This is a little bit about gross national happiness. I'm going to skip. This is a lovely book about sustainability from India. That quickly is children at my school working in organic situations. And this is, again, working in organic situations where I'll just have to pass through that quickly because obviously they're kids. But in a sense, they get a chance to do work where there's no technology. They can't use anything but recycled materials, and they have to work with each other. So when we're talking about reconnecting with the spirit, reconnecting with nature, in a secular instance, what I find is running a gardening program and looking into the biological processes of gardening is one way unconsciously to develop in children a love of nature. And if you love nature, you care for nature. And then as we care for nature, we care for each other. And at a sense, on a secular level, this is being a spiritual development without actually being spiritual. And obviously, in other situations, it'd be wonderful to be able to bring forward like this and move into meditation and yoga and a common prayer for people. But just to have children work with nature in the secular sense is a great way to try and reconnect, which what I think religare is in religion, the practice of reconnecting with something sort of clean, calm, and beneficial as a training to bring happiness and kindness. That's me.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much, John. Let's now have Prana Daza. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. It's been a really enlivening experience tonight to hear and share with everybody. Certainly some interesting topics that haven't been on the table at the G7, and perhaps I need to be put up there. I think that one of the common threads that comes through is we need to bring our spirituality into practical connect with children, and a way to, because spirituality can be very ethereal and very sometimes esoteric and difficult to grasp for adults, or to speak of children. The terminology, the philosophical terminology, the concepts and ideas of otherworldliness, and when we talk about the spirit or the soul and eternality. And one way that we've worked a lot on it in our curriculum development and in our delivery in the schools that I've worked in the Hare Krishna system, is through teaching God through nature, as John just said then. The idea of that behind all of the living we're not just talking about human species, but we see the living entity in all forms of life, and we learn to respect that namaste, offer that namaste to all living entities in the universe, and in this way we treat the universe with respect, and we teach the children to respect the universe, to respect the animals, the trees, the birds, the plants, and that we don't have that we try to remove a sense of exploitation and manipulation of the material universe, in terms so that we work together in harmony with God's plan, with nature, and in this way reduce the reactions that come upon us due to our greedy, lusty desires of kind of consumer society, that we just have to extract whatever we can do. We have to extract something from the universe, or we have to cut it up, or we have to destroy something to be happy or to progress. But we try to engage children in activities, like John said, with using the hands in nature, seeing the hand of God in everything we do, not just in the garden and not just in growing and preparing, but in our cooking, in our eating, in our offering, in our sharing, and everything that we do becomes a form of a sacrifice, a form of an offering to the Supreme Lord, offering back to God what He's provided to us through nature and through the kind of cosmic universal creation. And that's something that I thought I'd like to. I feel it brings together a lot of what we've been hearing tonight, and it's very much a universal principle of religion, bringing together and connecting. The word yoga means to connect. It comes from the Sanskrit word, root word yungte, or yoke, to connect up. So that the word yoga means to connect with the supreme consciousness. And we do that through acknowledging and appreciating God's creation and being caretakers and responsible caretakers for the creation. I think that's me.
Thank you very much, Prava. We'll now move on to Lynn. It's your turn again.
Thank you. I actually work in kindergarten, so I spend most of my days with children. And there's how do I put it? There's an innocence and a joy that they naturally have that unfortunately we lose as we get older. And it's one thing I love about being able to work with children in church and things like that, is to teach them the things so they can learn and develop that relationship with them in themselves as well. I remember as a child, my grandfather was very deaf. And after my grandmother died, he moved out to Australia and lived with us and was in the room next to me. And 40 years later, I can still remember hearing him pray. And I knew that he was talking to someone he knew, that he was a friend, someone he trusted, and someone he loved. And that helped me develop my feelings towards Jesus Christ. And so we need to let the children know, and not in a preachy way, but in a way that they can, a loving, kind way, so they too can gain an understanding. Because, like I said, 40 years later, it's like I'm next door still hearing him talk about the things that were important to him and express his feelings. We need to let them know that what we believe. We need to let them see in our, not just say we believe this, but let them see what we believe in the way we live our lives, I guess. We can't teach honesty if we're not honest. We can't teach being kind to others if we're not kind to others, I guess. And so we need to internalize the things that we want them. We need to internalize what we want to share with them, and we need to live what we believe, I guess. And that's all I don't need my 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lynn. Dr. John Bellavanza, could you have 5 minutes now, please?
Thank you. Look, can I just say, it is really amazing to be here tonight because there's so much commonality between what we're sharing. Obviously, we have one creator, so we're the children of God, so we must share some DNA that is profoundly connects us to each other. So I just want to say, it's amazing the truth and the wisdom that each of us have. In my final comments, I want to say that Prana talked about this, Ronald talked about this, Terry, Anna, all of you approach this topic in a sense in three areas, to use the head, the heart, and the hand, right? So thinking, feeling, and behaving. That morality and values is about those three elements. And I have to say, finally, moral psychology is caught up with spirituality, in that moral psychology has concluded that we are human because of moral reasoning, emotion, and behavior. And so we are on that journey together. The only thing the one obstacle that our founder talks about, when I was with him, when I was a leader in Canada, he said to me, John, can you control your bodily impulses, is what he said to me. I think Prana talked about this. And he asked me this question several times, and I started getting a little embarrassed because I thought, wow, why is he doing this? And I think he realized, well, this is a nice guy, but he's got to learn to manage himself well. So for us, peace begins within ourselves, and that is peace between mind and body. We have to be able to manage our impulses well, because I don't want to show the slide because we're running out of time, but our conscience tells us to do things, but our body is not necessarily our friend. I think St. Paul talked about this. He was honest and said, look, I have a great ideals, but I find another law at war within me. And I have to tell you, I'm still on that journey to manage myself well after all these years. So the journey that we have is a very shared journey as human beings. I just want to stop by just saying if you want to see the whole video on the conscience and spirituality and moral psychology, I'll post the link on the chat, Randall, and people can copy and paste that. But I wanted to send it to you, Randall, since we share a faith and you're sitting there. Well, what's your thoughts about all this? And I'll give you my last 2 minutes if that's possible.
I don't think we can do that. We have agreed on a certain program that each of you would speak, and we will have. If you're finished now, Dr. John, we can move on to Anna for her final comments. Thanks.
Thank you again. Like everybody else, I'm blown away by the sharing that's gone on tonight and the commonality between us all. It's a really beautiful, wonderful witness. But I want to conclude with a piece of scripture first, and then a few comments. Then he sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "If anyone wants to be first, let him be last of all and servant of all." Then he took a child, placed it in the midst of them, and putting his arms around the child, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes a child such as this in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes not me, but the one who sent me." We are sent, all of us, on a mission, whatever that mission might be. We are sent to be disciples in this world. And sometimes that can be a thankless task, and it can feel like, we're not really getting anywhere. But I always have a very kind of humble approach to it in lots of ways. And I think that comes from my Catholic background, but when I meet families or when I meet children, there are 3 words that are uppermost in my mind. One is welcome, the next is compassion, and the next is kindness. We need to show those values to everyone that we meet, because we're not in the business of judging people. We're not in the business of deciding what people should and shouldn't do. We're in the business of being there for people when they need us, of showing God's love and compassion to everybody that we meet. And a wise person said to me once, in order to belong, someone has to believe. We're the light. We're the Paschal candle. The flickering flame of faith and love and light in the world. And thank you. It's just been really interesting and quite beautiful to listen to everything that you have all said tonight. I'm going to take a lot away from this with thanks. Thank you very much, Anna. And it's been a wonderful time of us to share our thoughts tonight. I'm going to ask now Vanessa, who is the Deputy Chairperson of the Geelong Interfaith Network, to make some comments, and then we'll round up the event. Thanks, Vanessa. Thank you. Look, we really appreciate all of you for coming along, our speakers.
for their words. There's some absolute gems in there. You know, it's been wonderful to hear the different perspectives, but yeah, as Anna said, there's so many commonalities between our the way that we live our faith, and you know, it's just, you know, the things that have come out tonight have stood out, have been family, conscience, being a good example to those around us, letting our light shine to others. And, you know, I can see that everyone's very dedicated, all the faith communities are very dedicated to raising up this next generation to make a positive difference in the world. And, you know, that quote that Ronald gave, I can't remember it word for word, but, you know, about our children being, you know, the future that we don't know. Yeah, is, you know, it's so apt because, yeah, they are. And so it's wonderful to see that all of the faith communities are so serious about continuing that faith and emphasising it in children's lives, so that because, you know, as Anna said, people come to her, they don't really know what they are looking for, but they're looking for something. They're looking for, you know, a better way of life for their child. And so, you know, whether it's through this morality that comes through in our community through faith, because, you know, faith communities do act with a conscience and, you know, try and instill that into people. So, yeah, it's just been wonderful to listen to all of your comments. We really appreciate it. You can see this is how Interfaith works, in that we come together, we have discussions, and we all learn from other perspectives, and we see just how alike we all are. So we really value you coming tonight, and we hope that, you know, like, we'll be doing this again in another couple of months with a different theme, and we hope to see you again at that stage, if not as a speaker, as, you know, a viewer, joining in and watching what we're doing. So thank you very much. I'll hand over to Tim.
Yeah, well, just to finish up with, I'd like to thank Randall Apps, who's been our technical support tonight. We had, as you might have gathered, a little bit of difficulty with the Zoom code and so on, but he managed to get that all organised. So thank you very much, Randall. And as Vanessa has said, thank you all for participating. We would like to have your comments, and those of you who have been silent participants, we'd love you to send in your comments about tonight's event to our Gmail address, which I'll give you in a moment.
Yeah.
Please let us know what you think. We want to improve this concept of the dialogues, and also if you have any suggested topics for the future, we'd love to hear from you about that, so that we can plan to do this sort of thing in the future in a way that's relevant to where we all are in faith communities. So I'm going to close the meeting now, and it is our practice in the Geelong Interfaith Network to always finish our meetings with a minute of absolute silence as we gather up our thoughts and just live in the moment of what's happened. So I'll begin the minute of silence, and then, no, before I do that, perhaps if I remind you of our email address, it's Geelong Interfaith, all one word, @gmail.com. Geelong Interfaith @gmail.com. So please, let's have your comments and suggestions, and we will close our meeting now. Again, thanking you all with 1 minute of absolute silence. Thank you. Good. Thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you all again. Good night.
Thank you. Great night.
God bless you. Nice to see everyone.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes. See you later.